In step 4, we're going to compare different file type, table, and field views in ArcGIS Pro. So we'll begin in ArcGIS Pro where we'll add the demographics.csv or comma separated values file, and we'll view the table and fields. Then we'll export our demographics.csv to a new demographics.dbf or database file and view and compare the DBase table and fields to the original CSV table and fields. And last, we'll import the demographics.csv to a new file.geodatabase or asterisk.gdb and view and compare the GDB table and fields to the original CSV table and fields. Back in Windows Desktop, I'm going to open or reactivate my ArcGIS Pro project. And note in the catalog pane, in the project folder, there's our demographics.csv and our new regions.csv. And I want to add the demographics.csv to my ArcGIS Pro project, so I'm going to select it and drag it onto the map view. And that adds it to my map view in the contents pane. Under the new standalone table section, there's my demographics.csv. And if I right-click that layer and select Open, it opens the demographics.csv in a table view. There you can see the name of each field, and if I hover over each field, I can see the data type as well. And I can also view my table structure in the table view by clicking on More Options and selecting Fields View. And I'm going to dock my Fields View above my table view. And note that there's a message at the top of the Fields View that says Table or feature class corresponding to this view is read only. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom of the Fields View, you can see I can't add or update any of the existing fields. So I can't update the data structure of a CSV. Also note that the field names do include their full original name. You can see the data type there. And then, for example, the text field, you can see the length is 8,000. All right, so now I want to export my original demographics.csv as a DBF or database file. So I'm going to activate the table view and click on More Options and Export. That opens up the Export Table Geo process. My input table parameter is set demographics.csv. My output table, I want to save in my project folder. So I'm going to click on the Browse button for the output table and then browse to my project folder. And then inside my project folder, I'm going to name my exported table as demographics.dbf for database file or DBase file. Go ahead and click Save and make sure your parameters are set correctly, and then go ahead and click OK to export the original comma separated values file as a database file that's visible in the catalog pane as demographics.dbf and in the contents pane listed under standalone tables as demographics. Go ahead and click the new demographics layer and click once again to rename the layer as demographics.dbf so we can keep track of it. And then now I want to open up the table and the fields view. So I'm going to activate the demographics.csv table view, right-click demographics.dbf layer and select Open. And then I'm going to activate the fields view, right-click demographics.dbf and click Data Design and Fields to open up the fields view. And now I can compare the demographics.dbf table view to the demographics.csv, and you can see that it added an system or object ID, or what we call an OID. And it also looks like it truncated the field names, and that's because a limitation of a DBF is that the field names can only be 10 characters. Now let's explore the structure. So I'm going to activate the fields view, and first note that it's the same as a CSV, that I can't update the schema. It's read only. So if I scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see I can't add a field or update any fields. And then note that the text fields are limited to 254 and that it truncated any field that was greater than 10 characters. So that creates some confusion, definitely a limitation of the .dbf. Now I want to right-click in Catalog on my file geodatabase and select Import and Tables. And in the Table to Geodatabase, Geoprocess, I want to set my input table by selecting my demographics.csv in Catalog and dragging and dropping it into the input table parameter. My output geodatabase is already set to my project file geodatabase. Click Run. This imports my original demographics.csv table to a new standalone table in my project file geodatabase named demographics. And note that the geodatabase is listed in my folder section, but also in the database sections. That's the same geodatabase and that's the same demographic standalone table. Now I want to add the demographic standalone table to my map view. So I'm going to right click on it and select Add to Current Map. And that adds it in the contents pane under standalone tables. I want to rename the demographics layer so I can keep track of it as demographics.gdb. And then I also want to open the demographics.gdb table view in the table view tab group and the demographics.gdb field view in the fields view tab group so that I can view and compare the data and structure. You can see it added a system ID or object ID field, but it also maintained the long field names, which is a nice aspect of the geodatabase table structure. In the fields view, there I can see my longer field names are maintained. If I scroll to the right, I can see the length of my text fields are maintained as well. And then note there's no message at the top that says it's read-only. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom, I can see I can add a new field or I can update the existing field. So you can update the schema or structure of a geodatabase standalone table. And that's a big advantage of the geodatabase standalone table over the DBF or CSV. I'm going to reactivate my map view. Now I'm ready to start engineering my data in ArcGIS Pro. In step 5, we'll review our table schema and statistics in Data Engineer. First, we'll close the table and field view tab groups and remove the layers from the contents pane. Then we'll re-add our demographic standalone geodatabase table and use the Data Engineer to view the schema. Last, we'll click Add All Fields and calculate and view the statistics in Data Engineer as well. Back in ArcGIS Pro, I'm going to close my field views by right-clicking one of the field views and selecting Close Tab Group. I'll repeat the same process for the table views. And then over in the contents pane, I want to select all of the standalone table layers, right-click, and remove the layers from the contents pane. Now, if we look over in the catalog pane, remember that the project file geodatabase is listed a couple times under the folders and under the databases. I'm going to collapse the folders and work with the one under the databases and just select and drag my demographic standalone table and drop it on my map. And so now it's listed in the contents pane under standalone tables. Now, notice when I select a layer in the contents pane, any context-sensitive ribbons are enabled. So if I select the map view, it goes away. Select the demographics layer, and you can see the context-sensitive standalone table is enabled. I want to activate that, and we can use the standalone table ribbon, for example, to interact with our table by opening the attribute table, selecting records, viewing and updating the data design, like the fields view, for example, setting up relationships, which we'll do later in this demonstration, exporting the data, geocoding, creating points, or visualizing it by creating charts. Now, we're going to work with data engineering. So click the data engineering button to open up the data engineering view for the demographic standalone table. I'm going to go ahead and close the catalog pane, create a little more space for my engineering view. And then in the demographics data engineering view, note the visual display of the data structure, including, for example, the object ID. There's a little icon there, or maybe the double precision decimal number or a text field. And you can also hover over each field to learn more about those fields. And then, of course, we can add all the fields and calculate statistics. So in the data engineering view, I'm going to click on the add all fields and calculate button. That's going to add all the fields where I can view the schema there as well, the field names, the alias name, field types, for example. I can also view statistics that describe the values in each of the fields, including basic statistics, for example, like min and max and mean, the count, some additional statistics like the number of unique records, the mode, which is the most common value, the least common value, as well as some higher level statistics that describe the distribution of my values. Now, if I scroll back, there's a handy little chart preview that shows you a histogram of values. That's an asymmetrical distribution of the population because there's a bunch of smaller states and only a few larger states. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I can very quickly view the distribution of the values in each of the fields. At the bottom there, you can see there's a median, which I think is a median age field. Yep. And that, of course, has a symmetrical distribution because people are typically around the same age regardless of the size of the state. So there you can see the minimum median age and the maximum median age per state, as well as the overall average for all the states. And so you can see how the data engineering view is really handy for reviewing your data structure or schema and also the statistics of your values. Go ahead and reset your interface. Now we're going to transform our data using data engineering. So in step 6, we'll use the data engineer to transform our data. First, we'll open a table view, and then we'll add a new U.S. Census 2000 to 2010 population change field. Then we'll calculate the values in our new census population field by subtracting year 2000 from 2010 population. And last, we'll review our new population change values and statistics in Data Engineer. Back in ArcGIS Pro, we'll start by opening up the table view. I'm going to activate the Demographics Data Engineering view and click on Attribute Table. That opens the table view, and I'm going to stack it on top of my data engineering view. And if we look in our demographics table, we can see, for example, that there's a U.S. Census 2000 population field. And if I scroll a little bit further to the right, I'll find the U.S. Census 2010 population field. And I can use those two fields to calculate and create a new field over on the far right side of my table. So I'm going to activate the data engineering view, which activates the data engineering ribbon, where there are tools that allow me to transform my table. I can clean the table, construct, integrate, and format the table. In this case, I want to go to the Construct dropdown and select Add Field. And in the Add Field geoprocess, notice that the tool modifies the input table. The input table is going to be set to demographics. The field name we're going to call US underscore census underscore 2000 underscore 2010 underscore pop underscore change. We'll leave the field type set to long integer, accept the remaining default parameters and click OK. And if we scroll our table all the way to the right, we'll see that it added our new population change field with null values. Now we need to calculate those values. So I'm going to reactivate the data engineering ribbon, go to the Construct dropdown under Tools and select Calculate Field. The Calculate Field geoprocess also modifies the table. In this case, we're going to modify the demographic table and set the field name that we're going to calculate to our pop change field. And then down in the middle of the pane, you can see we're going to enter an expression that's going to calculate the population change field. So we're going to set 2010 population minus the 2000 population. So I double click on the fields to copy them down to the expression, and there you can see we're going to subtract the 2000 population from the 2010 population to calculate the values in the pop change field. Go ahead and click OK. And then if we scroll the table again to the right, we can see our updated population change values. And back in our data engineering view, if we scroll the field list all the way to the bottom, we can see that our pop change field is not bold. That means that the field has not been added to the statistics view yet. And so if we right click the pop change field and select add to statistics and calculate, it adds the field to the statistics view, where we can see that the population change has an asymmetrical distribution, which means that most states didn't change that much, but some states changed a lot, over 4 million people in growth, but the average growth was about 500,000 across all of our states. All right, go ahead and reset your interface, save your ArcGIS Pro project. Now we're ready to start relating our normalized and engineered data.